And from something as important as social entrepreneurship, we swivel into something equally important, which is the area of spirituality. It is our pleasure to host Swami Veda Titananda, who is going to talk to us about spirituality and project management in technical industries. Maharaj is a monk of the Ramakrishna Mission and currently is in charge of the Polytechnic College and Skill Development Center at the Shilpa Mandira since 2013. He was ordained into sannyasa in 2008 and since then has played multiple roles with the Ramakrishna Order. Maharaj, thank you for taking time today to come and spend your time with us and share some valuable thoughts for all of us. Over to you, sir.
Thank you for introducing me. A very good afternoon to everybody here. As was announced, I will be speaking for about 15 minutes on a very interesting topic, interesting to me especially, spirituality and project management. Now, how are these two related? Project management is something that has to do with this world. Spirituality, most of us don't have an idea what it deals with. This is how I have always looked at this. I have had opportunities to work in different projects, both before I became a monk of the Ramakrishna Mission and after. So, I have always believed that projects have three aspects to it. Projects will deal with men, with money, and with materials, with human resources, with financial resources, and material resources. Now, unless we have a very comprehensive outlook towards these three aspects of a project, the project will not reach the required level of efficiency. So, spirituality can give this comprehensive outlook. You see, in the Chandogya Upanishad, there is a saying, a rishi says, Yadeva Vidyaya Karosi, Sadhaya Upanishada, Tadeva Viryavattaram Bhavati. So, spirituality is a very important input as per our Indian way of thinking. Now, what has happened is, at present, the way we work, it is completely an alien style of functioning that we have just adopted ever since the British ruled us. And as a result, we have still not been able to make it our own. So there is a need immediately to make the style of working in this country our own. Indians are a distinct people in this world. We have a very distinct culture. I'm not talking of the religions within India. It is the Indian culture aspect that I'm speaking of. And that has to be adapted to project management or to the style of functioning itself. Take for example, resources. We know how there's a lot of misutilization, misappropriation, corruption involved in the way we work. I was reading a story once. There was a PWD minister of one of our states. He visited the PWD minister of another state. He stayed as his guest in his house. He was surprised by the palatial building in which that minister lived. He asked him, how did you build such a beautiful house? So that minister said, wait, tomorrow I shall tell you. Next day, he took our minister to a site and showed him, do you see a river there? He said, yes, I do see a river. Do you see a bridge over that? Yes, I do see a bridge over that. 25% of that bridge is this house. So this minister learned what is the way of working. 5 years later, that state minister visited this minister. And he was surprised because this minister's house was much better than what he had built. Naturally surprised, he asked, how did you build such a house? So our man says, tomorrow I shall explain it to you. He takes him to a site, shows him a river and says, do you see a river? He says, yes. Do you see a bridge? He says, no. That entire bridge is my house. So the way we look at money, the way we look at materials, and the way we look at men, human beings. When I say men, women included, when we look at human resources, when we look at these three resources, our outlook matters a lot. Buddha was once asked by a monk, that monk came to Buddha and said, Master, I need a new set of cloth. This is torn. He was able to see, Buddha was able to see that the cloth was completely torn. So Buddha gave him a new set of cloth and said, take this. Then Buddha asked, this cloth that you are wearing, what will you do with this? So that monk said, I want to use this as a pillow cover. Buddha asked, you already have a pillow cover now. What will you do with that cloth? So the monk says, I'll use it as a foot rug. Again the conversation continues. You already have a foot rug. What will you do with that? He says, that has become so torn that I can no longer use it as a foot rug. I'm going to use it for mopping my floor as a mop. Then Buddha laughingly asked, you do have a mop as of now. What will you do to that? Then that monk says, Master, that mop has disintegrated so much that only threads are available, and those threads I am going to use as wick in my lamp. So there is a particular Indian way of looking at these three resources: human resources, finances, and materials. We will have to adopt that. We will have to popularize that, understand it, and then adopt it. You see, when we deal with human beings, there's always this question of productivity that comes up. Get as much as possible out of a person as you can. Squeezing a man, basically. You know, in Bengal, we have a colloquial term for that. Chuse khawa. Chuse khawa is what you do with a fruit, you see, with a mango. So, there was a king. This king, when he was hunting, he came across a bird which sang with a heavenly voice. So he told his people, bring that bird to my palace. That bird was brought. He had built a beautiful golden cage with ivory and other precious stones. He kept the bird inside that, and he ordered the bird to sing. The bird would not sing. And even if it tried, it never reached the kind of beauty that he had heard in the forest. So he simply could not understand what happened. He gave it the best possible resources, the best possible arrangements, facilities. Yet the bird would not reach the kind of music that it was able to create in the forest outside. So a minister said, my lord, you want to listen to that bird sing again? He said, yes, of course, that is why all this I have done. Remove that bird from the cage. The bird came out. The bird came out, sat on top of that cage, and started singing. Again, that heavenly music. So, this productivity trap. I'm not telling that you will have to let people free. All I am telling you is that we still have to find our balance. You see, regarding human beings, the way we look at ourselves is exactly how we will look at others. So there also, I would like to point out, we have to bring in a change. If you find something going wrong in the way we treat our own fellow beings, especially in the context of a project, in the context of our daily work, there is something wrong with the way we look at ourselves. I'll tell you an example. Sometime back, a mother came to me and she said, I am having problem with my daughter. She is going far away from me. I'm losing that connect. This lady was a very accomplished lady. She was a very busy lady also. But then there was this problem that she raised. I called the daughter. Both of them sat before me. Now the fun is, I asked this daughter, can you describe your relationship with your mother in one word? How do you characterize your relationship with your mother in one word? Present day children, brilliant people these are. Immediately she said, she gave her answer. And the moment she gave her answer, the mother started shouting, do you see, Swamiji? Do you see? I said, what? She gave a very beautiful answer. What is your problem? Didn't you hear what she said, Swamiji? She says, our relationship is distant. Now, the fun is, you see, it happened right in front of me. No, I did not hear it as distant. And the girl did not say distant. She instead said distinct. You see this? The mother had already grown distant from the daughter, and now she was imputing the same thing on the daughter. So this is something which is happening always. Now, I won't drag this too long. All I want to place before you today is Swami Vivekananda has worked out a beautiful outlook for all of us. I would like to place that before you. You see, Swamiji gives three distinct ideas on how to bring in spirituality to develop a comprehensive outlook which will have its bearing on our project management and on our daily work. The first thing he says is, like we saw regarding our view towards money, regarding our view towards material resources, there is a certain covetousness in man. We want to covet, we want to take it. This is mine, let me have it. Nobody is looking, let me take this. This kind of attitude is there. So, Swamiji points out, Swami Vivekananda points out, he says, this problem arises because we have equated human activity with money, monetization of human work. This is a very interesting point because you see, most of the important schools of financial philosophy, economic philosophy, be it capitalism or communism, both of them suffer from this one fault. They think any activity that a human being does can be converted into money, which is actually not true. Now, if we believe in this, if we assume this a priori as a fundamental idea, then what comes out of it is this mess that we see in the way we work. In the Ishavasyopanishad, there is a statement, Ma gridha kasyat svidhanam. Don't covet, because who that after all is the wealth? It is, you are just trustees. We are all trustees. You see. We have it today, and it has to be given to somebody else tomorrow. You cannot claim permanent ownership of anything. Now, that doesn't mean that you will have to be callous. That doesn't mean that chalta hai sab. No. But this idea has to be very, very clear. What is your relationship with this world? Second, the second idea that Swami Vivekananda proposes is a very interesting idea. I'll just spend some time explaining this to you. He says, human activity has to be associated with purity and with detachment. Two ideas, purity and detachment. So purity means a sense of sacredness with what we do. I'm attending this program. There are so many others watching it. There are so many people who have worked for a long time arranging this. So this was a sacred act. It is a sacred act. What I am speaking now is an act of sacredness. So this has to come in. What has happened now is, we all work, but then there are only very specific activities which are sacred, specific areas which are sacred, specific topics which are sacred. Rest of the things are, you can play with them. You can play fast and loose with it. Now this has to go. This entire world is sacred. All life is sacred. Isha vasidam sarvam yattincha jagatyam jagat tena tyaktena bhunjita magrida kasyasvidhanam. This word, so this is the second idea that Swami Vivekananda proposes. You have to bring in purity into the work that we do. You see, purity, how do you explain purity? How do you understand purity? Purity is nothing but the sense that I am very intimately connected with everything in this world. As of now, I am sitting in a small corner here in Belur Math, Calcutta, Bengal. But then right now, as of now, I am connected. There is a very intimate connection that I right now have with everything that exists. This is the sense of purity. This is what purity means. So this is not just a very elevated, exalted, philosophical, abstract thought. It has a lot of bearing on the way we live our daily life. Take for example, I am running a project, I am the head of a project, I am involved in a project, which is going to set up a cement plant. Now you see how these things work. Now supposing I don't run this project properly and I end up building a faulty cement plant, it appears as if I have not suffered from this mistake that I have committed. But yes, there will be consequences. How will the consequences be? I'm just extrapolating this idea. It may so happen that 30 years down the line, I may want to build a house. The cement that comes from this faulty factory will certainly be a very faulty cement, and I end up weakening my own structure. So this is how we will be paying for our own mistakes if we are not careful. And this interconnectedness has to be understood. You see, there was a town. This is an American town. The story is about an American town. So in this American town, the houses were built out of wood. They were all wood cabins, small town. Now there was one carpenter who was the builder in that town. This carpenter had worked for about 30 years in that town, building houses, repairing houses. So the town committee one day met and they decided, this man has worked for us for more than 30 years and next year is going to retire. We should felicitate this man. We should honor this man. The town committee chairman said, I'll take care of that. Then he called this carpenter one day and said, my dear man, you have worked for us for more than 30 years. We are very pleased with the way you have worked. Now, you see, I have arranged for some wood here and there's a small plot of land over there. This will be the last house that you will build for. Can you please do it? Now this carpenter, certainly he must have had certain thoughts that most of us have. So long I have worked, they have squeezed work out of me. Last 1 year is remaining. Will it not be nice if they could give me some kind of relaxed work? Anyway, all right. Stupid people, they have given me, I'll have to do this stupid work, I did this. With some sort of grumbling, he built the house. Now, next, when his retirement happened, on the stage he was called and the chairman handed over a key to him and said, this is the key of the house that you built last. That is a gift that our town is giving you in honor of your service here. Now, this is a very interesting story, you see. So, all that we do, it looks like I am doing for somebody else. See, I will be running projects for somebody else. We rarely run a project for ourselves. However, there is an interconnectedness. We will be asked to reply. We will be asked to answer. We are accountable. This concept has to come in. That comes in only if we understand that everything in this world is connected. In other words, there is purity here. There is a sense of sacredness. The other idea is the detached work. So 3 ideas that Swami Vivekananda gives to us, through which we can develop this comprehensive outlook. The first one is, all human activity cannot be monetized. This concept has to go. Money will remain. You cannot go back to your barter system. However, you cannot degrade man, you cannot degrade human activity by considering that everything will be considered in terms of money. Second, all human activity is based on purity. We will have to recognize that it is based on purity. We are connected. There is a connection between all of us, between everything in this world. Third, detached work. We will have to learn how to work in a detached manner. How do we do that? Let me tell you a story. There was once a king. Now this king, like King Alexander, you see, he got a very small kingdom from his father and he built up a large kingdom. He built a very large kingdom and a very beautiful kingdom. And he set up wonderful systems. And he started getting bored. Bored because after a certain time, after you have gone through achieving a lot, there's nothing else, there's no innovation, there's no newness in the novelty in the work that you do. So he thought of retiring. Now when he thought of retiring, he wanted to discuss this. But being the king, being the head of this entire kingdom, He certainly could not discuss this with his own subordinates. He remembered when he was a young boy, he had a friend. This friend had become a monk and he used to stay the outskirts of his capital. He thought, I'll go talk to him. He went there. Two friends met after a very long time. They were very happy. They spoke. Now, what happened is, this king said, Dekho, I have done so much. I am now finished with this. I am satisfied. I want to retire. What do you say? The monk said, welcome. Excellent. We also are of the same state of mind. We have also retired from the world. Come, be a part of it. Then the monk asked, you built this kingdom on your own. You want to give it up. Who's going to take over next? Have you thought about it? The king had not thought. He basically come here to discuss those things. So the monk asked, how about you giving it to your son? The king said, no, the boy is too small. He can't handle this kingdom. How about to your prime minister? Your main man, right-hand man. So the king says, I don't know whether he can run it on his own, because if I am there, he works well. If I am not there, he falters. He's not confident enough. Then the monk came up with a beautiful idea. The monk said, why don't you gift your kingdom to me? You see, as monks, you see, we can take diksha, we can take. He said, give it to me. The Raja immediately thought, the king thought, not a bad idea. This is a very good man. I wouldn't want this kingdom to be spoiled after me. This is a good man. He won't harm the kingdom at least. And he immediately gave his kingdom. You know how kingdoms are given? Those Rajas would have some rings, signet rings. So the ring is taken and he handed it over to the monk. The monk asked, how do you feel now? Raja said, I feel free. The burden has been removed. Those of us who have been working, we can realize this. So, many of you may be working from home, but still, burden is there. That burden will go one day. Very interesting. Then the monk asked, what will you do now? Raja said, I have never felt this free in my life. First thing I'll go to my house, remove this stupid royal clothes, wear clothes like a normal man. So the monk said, hey, wait a minute. Where do you go? Where will you go? What did you say? You go to your house. The Raja understood there is no his house because the kingdom itself has been handed over to this monk. That house belongs to the monk now. Unless he is invited, it will be an intrusion to go. So the Raja said, I'll go away now. And do what? So the Raja said, I'll hunt for a job, I'll earn money, I'll live a life, lead my life. So the monk said, you see, you ran this kingdom for so many years, you actually built it up. Now I don't want you hanging around in the same kingdom while I rule this. Because there will be a conflict there will be two power centers. You will still continue to be an important man here. I want you out of my kingdom. So the Raja said, fair enough. What you say is right. I'll go to some other kingdom. I'll pick up a job. I'll work. Very interesting. Now, the monk went on asking this because monk wanted to know if this man would still continue to work. Though he has given up this kingdom, what is his actual state of mind? You see, because human beings have to understand, have to realize there is a state of existence possible where you can transcend work. But it need not be done forcibly. It will happen. When the man grows, when the inner man grows, he will reach a stage where he will be free from all activity. Raja has still not come to that stage because he will still go somewhere and he will take up a work and he will do the same thing. He will actually build a kingdom for himself, another kingdom for himself. So this monk said, Acha, if you are going to work, then I will give you a proposition. Man, I have a proposal for you. What we can do is, you see, I have got a kingdom recently. And I don't believe in running in all these activities, etc. So, I'll fix a salary for you. You run this kingdom for me. In my name, on my behalf. It was a very good deal for the Raja. This was some work that he was an expert in. So, this deal happened in that forest outside his capital. He came back. Nobody in the kingdom knew this deal that had happened. 6 months later, this monk suddenly realized, I have a kingdom. I own it now. The Raja is running it on my behalf. I just better go and see how he is doing it. He went and asked, Kya? Monto, Maharaj, chal raha hai theek? Yes, he said, fine. Kingdom is going on fine. Then this monk asked, how do you feel now? There's a joy in working. There's no tension. There's no stress. Monk asks, why? The Raja says, see, because now the pure joy of working alone is mine. The final responsibility is yours. This kind of working is detached work. Detached working does not mean you're not interested in the work, careless work. No. Jo hoga, that is not detached work. Detached work is you will put your entire heart and soul into the work, and at the same time, you will know for sure that the work is not yours, the results are not yours, whatever comes out of it is not yours. It is for that owner, that man. So now, if you are a believer in God, detached work is very simple. That is why in all the religions of the world, detached work has been associated with their religion, with their God. If you are not a believer in God, then how do you do this? That is where organization comes in. Organization can absorb your activity, the results of your activities especially, the credit of your activities especially. You see, this is not an interactive session. I want to ask you all one thing. Do you all have an idea when the Oxford University was set up? Oxford University is a very famous university. You know, it was set up somewhere in the 10th or 11th century. So, in the rest of the world, we have organizations which have been running for so long. Organizations these are. Now, in India, we are very proud of saying that we have 5,000 years of unbroken history, 7,500 years of unbroken history. Unfortunately, notice one thing, we don't have organizations which have survived that long. Why is that? That is because this kind of outlook has not been popularized in this country. It has to be brought into practice. It has to be disseminated to people. People should be made to understand the nitty-gritties of this outlook, and it has to be practiced. What I was thinking of is, if this kind of outlook is not brought into this country as early as possible, we will all be in for a very, very difficult time ahead. So a project manager who can work with this outlook, with this spiritual outlook, will bring about a very great result both for himself inside and for his outside. That is what Swami Vivekananda proposes when he says, what is the kind of attitude with which we shall work? Atmano mokshartham jagat hitayata. Atmano mokshartham. I should grow. I cannot suffer always because somebody else has to grow. Now, I too shall grow. They too shall grow. The world outside also should prosper. It cannot be, you see, that entire bridge has become my hope. It cannot be like that. Even the 25% of the bridge has become my hope. That is also not acceptable. So these kinds of ideas are there. I wanted to place this before my 20 minutes are up. Kaushik, I'm very, very grateful to the organizers of this seminar for having given me this opportunity. The discussions for this program went on for a very long time, more than 3-4 months, I think. I'm so happy that finally I was able to present it here. There are many of my friends in PMI. My regards to all of them. My regards to all the listeners here. And Kaushik, thank you very much.
Maharaj, thank you very much. A very, very enlightening session. There are a lot of questions, so hopefully we will interact with you through that. Shawan,
Okay.
would you like to?
Thank you, Kaushik. And Maharajji, on behalf of PMI West Bengal chapter, thank you once again. It has been our privilege for hosting you for this session. So we do have a flurry of questions, but let me start with one which comes from Vikas, who says that how do we imbibe the spiritualism and ethical values to the team with which we are working, and how as an individual can we help in imbibing this in our respective organizations?
True. So the first thing that generally comes up whenever these ideas are discussed is, how do we teach others? I would just like to point out to Vikas and to all others who are listening that the very concept of spirituality begins with me and ends with me. Okay? It has nothing to do with rest of the people. So rest of the people can continue to work as they have been working. I, however, will be having this outlook. You see, if you don't mind me being explicit, I was once asked in a program when I gave these ideas. I was once asked in a program. They said, one person said there, Maharaj, so I want to follow all these ethical practices, etc. I believe in them. However, there are my superiors who force me to be corrupt. It's a very interesting question. So I gave them the idea. The idea is, if in generally you see, corruption is not a localized thing. Corruption always has a chain. So it starts with the bottommost person who is on the floor, and from there it goes all the way right up to the topmost person. So the channel of the movement for money, the channel is like that. Now the thing is, you can be a part of it. You don't have to be a major obstacle, because if you are too puritanical, if you are too, what shall I say, prudish, you cannot be a part. You can't be a part of any daily activity. You can't be a part of any project. You have to leave that place. So what I told them is, ensure that no ethical practice products enter into you. You supposing there's a bribe that has to be passed on upstairs. You are a part of it, you pass it on, but why do you take your cut in that? You know, when there's a fight that happens between cobras and cats. Cobra is a very poisonous snake, and a cat. And you know, in all these fights, the cobra dies. Do you know how the cobra dies? Cobra dies in a very interesting way. The cat goes on hitting the tail of the cobra. The cat hits the tail of the cobra. And when it hits the tail of the cobra wants to bite the paw of the cat. And the cat is so fast, the cat removes its paw. And the cobra ends up biting its own tail. You see, the poison within the cobra doesn't hurt that cobra, you see. It can kill 200 people, but it doesn't touch the life of that cobra. But once it has bitten itself, its own poison kills it. So, ethical practices, practice of spirituality in daily life begins and ends with me. It doesn't begin, it has nothing to do with teaching others, forcing others, criticizing others, coercing others. This is the idea that I wanted to place.
Thank you, Maharajji. And really an eye-opener, because yes, when we hear such dissertations, we do appreciate that the spirituality needs to begin from within. But to really appreciate that in our day-to-day life, and especially when we are into our daily courses, it's so difficult. So another question which comes along the same line is, how do you continue to still motivate yourself to be in the path of righteousness and spirituality when you see all around people are not appreciating your work? This is coming from a number of people who are attending, one amongst them being Shaunmit Srivastav.
So, anyway, in Buddha's life, there is a story. There's a beautiful story that is there in Buddha's life. You see, Buddha, before he became Buddha, he was a king. He was a prince, son of a king. And his name was Siddhartha. Now, this Siddhartha left home in search of truth, in search of spirituality. So, when he was in the forest, one day what happened was, it was a summer afternoon. While he was walking, he saw a beautiful pond. Now, it was very hot. The water was cool. So, he slowly, very slowly removed his clothes, entered the pond, had a good bath. It refreshed him very, very greatly. And when he was about to come out, he saw at a corner of the pond there were some lotus flowers. See, lotus flower. Most of the people today have not even seen a lotus flower. It's a wild flower basically, and when it is in bloom, there is a beautiful smell. So he saw the lotus flowers in bloom, he went, just smelled them. And he came out. See, the moment he came out, what happened was, there was a tree nearby, and from the tree, a yaksha comes down. A yaksha is a demi person. He is neither a god nor a devil nor a human being. It's another type of person. You must all remember that there is a story, but there is something that we can learn from this story. The yaksha comes down and starts scolding him. Yes, what a rotten person you are. This pond belongs to me. I am the caretaker of this pond. You entered it without my permission. How stupid of you, how illegal of you. And he went on shouting. With that, Siddhartha actually did not know that the pond belonged to the yaksha. So, if he knew, he would have certainly asked for permission. But then, that yaksha did not even give this fellow a chance to even speak. Now, when this shouting was going on, what happened was, the local king's nobleman, a very important officer of the king, he was coming by horse. Hot day, coming by horse from a distant place. He was also feeling very hot. He also saw this beautiful pond. He saw Siddhartha having taken a bath. He immediately got down from the horse, ripped off his clothes, jumped into the pond, and dirtied the pond, you see. Because if you jump into the pond, there's a way you jump into the pond. If you just slide into it, the water remains clean. But if you make a noise inside the pond, if you make a lot of hangama inside the pond, the muck that is there down comes up. The water becomes dirty. He dirtied the pond basically when he took his bath. And just when he was about to come out, he saw all those beautiful flowers, lotus flowers. He just tore some of those flowers. He will take it home. And he was about to go on the horse. Siddhartha saw all these things, and he thought, I didn't do anything. I was so decent. And there was so much of scolding this yaksha gave me. The way this nobleman has behaved, this yaksha is going to kill that man, sure. But then what Siddhartha saw was that man went away. Yaksha didn't do anything. So he caught hold of the yaksha and said, aha, I am an innocent person, I don't speak much, and you went on berating me, shouting at me. This man, he literally spoiled your pond, and he just took away the flowers. So the yaksha says, listen, that is an ordinary person. I am happy that he did not soil my pond, you see. He could have poured urine inside that. That he didn't do. I am happy with that. You, however, you speak of higher ideals. You yourself tell the world that you are going after the truth. Now, as your ideals are high, your actions have to be high. His ideals are not that high. He never said big things. He is a very simple, down-to-earth person. So his actions are okay for me. Whereas you did a mistake. So this keeping yourself motivated. Nobody else will do this, you see. You will have to, that yaksha was basically a person from within Siddhartha's heart itself. So you will have to keep on holding this ideal before you. I personally voluntarily chose to be ethical, you see. There will be problems which will come, but then I will know that I am paying a price for reaching an ideal. That is the only way we can keep ourselves motivated. Nobody else can motivate one more person. You motivate yourself. End of story.
Yeah, right. And just continuing to that, another question which came in, which talks about that we do have scriptures from Swami Vivekananda and others which are very enlightening. So how do we, as people who are in this participant list, all of us, most of us would have kids. So how do we imbibe those teachings within our kids? Because at the end of the day, they are the future of the world. So what we teach them today would what the world would become tomorrow. So how do we do that?
So reading is the first thing. You have to study. You have to read and study. What is it that you read? Those are the ideas that enter into you. So there's a saying, Christians are very fond of saying, you see, out of the fullness of the heart, the mouth speaketh. Similarly, out of the fullness of the heart, the hand worketh. So what comes out as action is actually our own innermost thoughts. If the thoughts are not very deep, actions will not be very deep. How to make the thoughts deep? How to make the heart large? It is by deep study. It is not a day's job. It is something that you do for 10 minutes every day for years together. It happens. It is done by bringing in an atmosphere of study inside the family, by bringing in an atmosphere of discussion inside the family, critical thinking, reasonable thinking, rational thinking, we will be able to bring it out. This happens, you see. The man also, the boy and girl also has to want it. You can't force them. You force them, they'll just, what shall I say, they'll fly apart. But there is an environment that has to be. You see, one of our Swamijis used to tell me a very beautiful thing. I have been working with education institutions for a long time in Ramakrishna Mission. And he had a very beautiful philosophy of education. He would say, don't force your children to do anything. So the duty of a teacher is like the duty of the mother hen, you see, hen, murgi. What it does is, it doesn't do anything, but it just gives warmth to the egg. The egg develops on its own. It protected the egg and it gave warmth. It protected the egg and it gave warmth. That is all it did. So our duty with our youngsters is just that. See that they don't go into a wrong path. They should not drink, smoke, have drugs. They should not indulge in unfair activities. That is enough. Protection of that side is enough. And the other one is give them warmth. So there has to be discussion. They must feel free to talk to us, discuss these things. There will be a lot of differences of opinion. We should allow them their freedom to, take it. You find out now. That is the way I would, if you want to ask my advice for it, this is the way I would like to go about it. Down.
Thank you, Maharaji. And I think we still have so many questions, but again, always we are stretched on our time. So thank you so much. And this session has been a spiritual session for even us, and lots of food of thought for every one of us, and a lot of time for introspection. Thank you.
Thank you, very, very much.